Hey, welcome back to the course. In this lesson, we'll be talking about storytelling design, which is a crucial step before moving on to mockups. One of the biggest things that has helped me is learning how to become a better storyteller and the power of a story. And by this, I mean, if you want to build a product and you want to build a product that is relevant to folks, you need to put yourself in their shoes and you need to write a story from their side. So we spend a lot of time writing what's called user narratives. This is a quote from Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter and Square, and let me explain why it's very interesting. Now that we know what we want our users to be able to do with our app, and that we understand who they are, it is time to start figuring out how they will interact with the product. In order to do that, we'll create user narratives for our product that will illustrate every step in the user's journey through it. I will refer to them as narratives or stories. That means the same thing. The persona we've defined earlier will be the voice of the story. That means we won't be saying the app should do something, but I, as Kevin, will do something. So remember to write your narratives using the active voice. There's two types of user narratives. One that's more generic, that says, as Kevin, I can take a picture and apply a filter to make it beautiful. The other type of narratives is more detailed and explicit. It describes each step of the flow. I click the photo button to take a picture. Next story is I can swipe to choose a filter. Then when I click a filter, it alters the image accordingly. This second type of stories is very useful for many reasons. It allows you to make sure you have a comprehensive approach of the flow and that you're not forgetting anything. It will also be very useful when coding the app, especially if someone else is doing it, but it can be a bit tricky to write all these stories without a visual support. That's why we'll be doing that in the next lessons as we're building our mockups. For now, we want to get a general sense of how the app would work. Describing the flow of the app is a good premise before we start creating a visual draft of it. And it's also a good way of coming up with essential subfeatures that we might not have thought about in the precedent steps. Now, let's describe what our user will be able to do with the app. The first step will be to write a goal story, and you can use this template to do that. As a user persona or user type, I want to accomplish something so that some benefit happens. So for us, it will be, as Kevin, I want to take a nice picture of what I'm doing so that people can see that I'm doing something cool. Notice that the goal is something we found out earlier when talking to our potential users and that we put in the persona. Next step is to break this goal story into smaller pieces explaining what the user will do. So let's start with our first goal story. As Kevin, I want to take a nice picture of what I'm doing so that people can see that I'm doing something cool. I will open the app, I take a picture, I apply a filter to make it look good and therefore worth being shared. I can add a description to my enhanced picture, and I can select on what networks I want to share my enhanced picture on. What I advise you to do is to use post-its. Write each story, the goal story and the small stories, on a post-it and stick them to the wall. That way you'll be able to move them around and modify them easily. While doing this, don't hesitate to try a few different things and combinations, and compare them to see which one would be better. Again, a good way to do that is to show your user the different possibilities. And try to remove as much friction and unnecessary steps as you can when you organize your stories. Here we could have told the user to choose the filter before taking the picture, but asking the user to take the photo first is easier. It doesn't have to think. Making the first step of the flow very easy will maximize the chances of him completing the task. So we'll go back to selecting a filter after taking the photo. We also said that one of the pains we wanted to solve was that pictures on other platforms such as Twitter or Facebook are lost in a massive amount of information, and that the solution would be to create a feed of photos only. Let's think about that feature and its narrative using a tool I like. It's called the Desire Engine Canvas. This canvas was created by Nir Eyal, who's an entrepreneur and writer who writes mainly about business and psychology. There's the link to his blog in the description, and I strongly advise you to have a look at it. It's full of great insights. He calls this canvas the Desire Engine Framework, and this framework is designed to help you build a product that will engage people and get them hooked. It is mainly useful for consumer products, but it can still lead to an interesting reflection if you're working on a B2B product. After all, B2B clients are humans as well. This canvas is made of 4 boxes: the trigger, the action, the variable reward, and the commitment. This canvas, as every tool I give you in this course, is in the files you downloaded at the beginning of the course. You can print it and use Post-its to fill it. Let me make some space here so we can start filling the canvas. Trigger is pretty self-explanatory. It is something that triggers the use of the product. For us, it's when a user sees or does something cool he wants to share with other people. And this is an internal trigger because it is something the user feels that triggers the action. But before the internal trigger becomes effective, you usually would have to set up external triggers like sending a notification saying that the user could share on your app the photo he has just taken, or reminding him the usefulness of the app by sending him a weekly email saying that 10 of his friends have posted pictures on the app during the week. Our main action is that the user enhances his picture and share it. This is pretty straightforward. Next up is variable reward. Studies have shown that when we work to get a reward, our level of dopamine is at its higher point not when we get the reward, but while we're working to get that reward. What gets us excited is that we're expecting something. And this is where it gets very interesting. The same studies have shown that our level of dopamine goes through the roof when the reward is not predictable, when it's not always the same. In some cases, it can be powerful enough to shut down the areas of the brain associated with judgment and reason, while activating the parts associated with wanting and desire. Think about slot machines or lottery. Not knowing exactly what we're going to get gets us really, really excited. So what could be a great variable reward for us? Well, since people share pictures because they're looking for other people's validation and attention, the like mechanism seems perfect. It's very simple, it's a one-click action, and it allows the user to see how much validation he gets in a very simple and straightforward way. And this is how our app can become very addictive, like a game where the goal is to find the coolest thing to share to get the more approbation we can. Likes usually come with comments, so let's not give our users any frustration. Let me make a quick side note here. Giving the user feedback is one of the most important principles of design. If a user does an action and nothing happens, he'll be completely lost. And this is valid even for tiny design details like when a user uses a button. On the web, when you see a button, hover over it and click on it. It usually changes. It becomes a bit darker or it moves a little bit as if you were pressing it. These 3 states are usually called normal, hover, and active. The likes and comments are also a way of giving the user feedback on his action. Alright, let's go back to the canvas. The last box is commitment. This commitment phase has 2 goals, and I'm quoting Nereal here. The first is to increase the odds that the user will make another pass through the design engine when presented with the next trigger. Second, now that the user's brain is swimming in dopamine from the anticipation of reward in the previous phase, it's time to pay some bills. The commitment generally comes in the form of asking the user to give some combination of time, data, effort, or money. The commitment implies an action that improves the service for the next go-around. Inviting friends, stating preferences, building virtual assets, and learning to use new features are all commitments that improve the service for the user. There's 2 things we could do here. Make the user follow other people and invite friends to the app, and we could also redirect him to his feed so he can see other people's pictures and he can like them. He's himself waiting for people to like his pictures, so he'll be more inclined to do the same for other people's pictures. And by doing so, it will encourage these people to continue using the app. Seeing other people's cool pictures will also entice him to post some more cool pictures of his own in the future. We could even combine both by putting a subscribe to people or invite friend option in the user feed. This is not something that Instagram does, but it could be really interesting. Okay, this should be a good basis for the feed narrative. So here it is. As Kevin, I want to be able to see my friends' pictures and give them feedback so they know that I'm giving them validation. So I open the app and access my feed of my friends' pictures. I can like my friends' pictures, I can comment on them, and as I scroll down my feed, I'm invited to follow more people or to invite some friends to the app. We can also update our main action narrative and add "my pictures is shared on my followers feed." That would probably be enough for the first iteration, but let's pretend for the sake of the course that we've done a few iterations and gotten some feedback from our first users. And one thing we had not thought about is that our product works great when a lot of people are already using it and that each user has many friends on the app. But right now, the first users feel lonely and they're not getting much feedback. So we should allow the users who are already using the app but who don't know each other to see each other's pictures. Let's write a narrative for that. The goal story will be, as Kevin, I want to be able to see other people's pictures and give them feedback. And we'll break that into smaller stories. I can access interesting pictures from people who are not my friends. I can like the pictures and I can comment the pictures. And let's use what we've learned with the Desire Engine Canvas to make the story a bit more interesting. Being published in this interesting pictures from other people section could also be a variable reward, a kind of jackpot reward, the You Super Cool reward. If we say that you have to get a high number of likes to get this reward, this will entice people to take very cool pictures, to invite their friends to use the app so they can like their pictures, and to interact a lot with people on the app. So let's update the main action. My picture is published to the Explore section if I get a high number of likes. And we'll add 2 more narratives. A notification. As Kevin, I want to know when people interact with my pictures. I open the app, I go to the notification section, and I'm able to see who has interacted with my pictures. And finally, the profile story. As Kevin, I want to access my information and pictures. So I open the app, I can go to my profile. I can see how many people I follow and how many people follow me. I can see my pictures, I can find more people to follow, I can invite friends, and I can change my profile picture. It's impossible at this stage to be sure that you have all the stories, because things will evolve as you design, but also because you have to actually flow through it in a user interface to see what's missing. Assume that you'll be uncovering a good chunk of new stories as part of designing the user interface. Also, keep in mind that even if we've organized narratives in silos, users will actually jump around back and forth between these different silos. What's great about this process is that it's not only a way for you to understand what you'll be designing, it's also a way to prioritize and organize your work when you or someone in your team will actually be coding the app. Agile and Scrum methodologies use user stories as the center of the organization of the development of the product. A final word on making user or potential users write these narratives. 3 reasons why it's interesting. First, once you've pitched them your solution, they might have a very different mental representation of it, and they might think about things or flows you haven't thought about. Second, they will phrase the stories in their own domain-specific language and make comparisons specific to the domain. And third, they will have a naive approach. They won't think about technicality when you might be refraining yourself because of that. But be careful, you cannot just rely on that. As Dieter Rams said, good design is innovative. And I'm sure you've heard what Henry Ford supposedly said about that matter. If I had asked what people wanted, they would have said, faster horses. Okay, we're done for this lesson. Next video we'll talk about and we start working on the mockups of the app.